Yo, what's up guys? HyperRocket back again with another video. So this is not going to be a traditional Hypixel Pit video or anything, or even one that involves any gameplay. I'm sort of going off script here, and I'm just going to put out a video, quick, dirty video on, I guess something that I've been getting a lot of comments on recently. So if you guys don't remember, a while back I posted videos on PvPing with the Razer Viper Mini, as well as the Razer Viper, which is the full-size variant of it. And I guess I've just been getting a lot of comments like, okay, I have this size hands, or maybe these are some of the properties that I want from a gaming mouse, what should I get? And I sort of wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about exactly which mouse suits you better among the two, and then maybe go into some other options at the end of the video. But I guess if you're not looking to watch a full-length review on these mice, I would just say, generally speaking, if you have small to medium-sized hands, so I have 17.5 by 9.5 centimeter hands, and you basically don't palm grip, so I like relaxed claw, for example, definitely Razer Viper Mini is your best bet. If you're looking for something, like if you're left-handed, or if you have really large hands, and you're looking to fingertip grip, I think the Razer Viper is a better option. And then I'll go into the actual differences afterward. But yeah, if that's all you're looking for, then you can click off this video now and your decision is already made. But I guess let's go into a little bit more detail. Let's talk a little bit about the shape of both of these. So although this is called the Razer Viper Mini for a reason, it's actually not an identical scaled down shape of the Razer Viper. So, and the first thing to notice is that if I turn the mice like this, you'll notice that they're about the same height, but proportionally they're not. So yeah, basically what that means is that the back of the Razer Viper Mini will curve up faster than the back of the Razer Viper. So instead, the Razer Viper seems a little bit more flatline in your hand, a little bit more low profile, whereas the Razer Viper Mini actually fills out your hand a little bit more because the slope is way steeper on it. So what that means is that if you have small hands in particular, this is going to feel more like a claw palm mouse as opposed to a fingertip mouse, which is really what this is designed for. At the same time, it's not a terribly high arch, so you can still fingertip. So actually, like, I've been trying to switch a little bit towards fingertip, and it's been working pretty well, at least on the Viper Mini. So even if you still have small hands and you like the slim like low profile design, I would still recommend the Razer Viper Mini. A little bit more in other dimensions, I'm not going to go into exact measurements, but the Razer Viper Mini is basically a scaled down version of the Viper. So I guess in that way, it does make sense to call it the Razer Viper Mini. So also the design is pretty much identical, but if I flip them upside down, you can kind of see the difference in grip width and length as well. So I think the beauty of having a shorter mouse is that you get a little bit more flexibility, especially if you don't have your full palm on the mouse, but instead I can like flick downward like this, and I can still have extra space. So if I want micro adjustments in my FPS games or something, I always have that option. A little bit more about things like physical properties of the mouse that you're going to notice when you put your hand on it. The coating is very similar, at least on top, for both mice, but as you'll notice, there are rubber grips on the side of the Razer Viper, whereas they got rid of them on the Razer Viper Mini. So instead, this is just a hard plastic, but otherwise they're identical. Build quality altogether, you can see on both mice that there is some side flex. So hopefully I don't mess anything up by doing this because I'm going to actuate the side buttons, but I can basically with one hand squeeze this in. I'm not sure if you guys are hearing that, but I could squeeze the sides of the Razer Viper in. The Razer Viper Mini is a little harder to do, and I don't think I can actually, I guess I can do it with one hand, but it definitely takes a little bit more force. If I use like both my thumbs, you can definitely press it in though. So that's something to keep note of. Keep in mind that, like, yeah, I mean, you have to use quite a bit of force, and this is not going to happen just from gripping the mouse tightly. I don't think anyone with like any normal person is going to be able to do that. So I would say build quality is not really an area of huge concern for either of these mice, especially because they're full body designs, so no holes anywhere. And unless you're literally just tossing the mouse around the room, smashing on the floor, I think you're fine. This should last you years to come. Away from the shape and other things, let's talk about buttons. So first I'm going to talk about mouse 1 and 2. So I'll give you guys a quick sound test of these. So this is the Razer Viper Mini. And this is the Razer Viper. So they both use Razer's new like optomechanical switches, which are interesting. And I guess I've talked about in both reviews, actually, of my when I was PvPing with both these mice, the downsides, at least in Minecraft PvP, with using these buttons. And the main one is that you don't actually have access to double clicks. So you can't really control the timing of these, and the whole idea of optomechanical switches is that it gets rid of double clicks altogether, just because for most ordinary people that's not a very good thing. That aside, if you're talking about just feel and double clicking is not an issue, so meaning that these mice are still on your radar, then I would definitely say I would give the edge to the Razer Viper Mini. They feel a little bit crisper. The Razer Viper Mini actually came out after the Razer Viper, so it gave Razer a little bit more time to work on the feel of these. So if you're looking for a more like mechanical kind of feel to your Switch, one that's found on most gaming mice, I would go for the Razer Viper Mini. Definitely a lot crisper. If you're looking for like a softer feel, and I know people that do prefer a softer feel with the clicks, like the Razer Viper clicks are not bad. I think people give them like a lot of crap, but I actually think they're decent clicks, and if you get used to them, I think they're really good. So definitely something to keep in mind as well. I don't think the button should really be a deal breaker. Talking a little bit about the side buttons, the first thing that I'll say is just that the Razer Viper is an ambidextrous mouse. So you have side buttons on the left and the right of the mouse, and you can choose through the software which ones you want to enable or which ones you don't, or if you want to enable all of them. So if you're a right-handed person, you're not really going to worry too much about hitting these on the right side. So I would say forget about that concern, unless you're like really trying to hit them. Like I can, like if I really try to press it in my ring finger, I can get it to work. But otherwise, like if I'm just grabbing my mouse normally, and then even if I'm squeezing tight, I can't actuate the buttons. Not an area of concern. The downside of the Razer Viper side buttons is that they don't really protrude out at all. So Razer countered the whole accidental click problem by making the side buttons really small and like recessed into the mouse. So you actually have to be very deliberate when you hit them. Not a huge deal. I think a lot of people really don't like this, so people who like pick up their thumb to move it to the side button to click, I think those people might struggle a little bit with the Razer Viper buttons, but at least for my use and what I think is quote-unquote proper technique, I sort of, if I want to hit either of these side buttons, I sort of just tilt my thumb up. So if I want to hit the back one, I just sort of do that. If I want to hit the front one, I just do that. So the Razer Viper Mini is nicer to have, I guess, in terms of side buttons, because the buttons actually protrude out of the mouse. I think this gives you a good enough idea of it. So especially if you're a person to sort of pick up your thumb and press the buttons, they're easier to find. So that's something to keep in mind. DPI button, there is one on top for the Razer Viper Mini, and it's on the bottom for the Razer Viper. So that's the difference. If you like having an extra button on top, that's kind of nice on the Razer Viper Mini. But otherwise, like you can probably rebind something to one of these side buttons on the Viper. Scroll wheels, very similar. I'll try to give you guys a sound test, but I'm not sure how well this will work. This is the Razer Viper. This is the click. Razer Viper Mini. Click. So the clicks of the scroll wheels feel remarkably similar. I would say the Viper Mini is way quieter. I think the steps are a little bit more pronounced on the Razer Viper though, and maybe that was illustrated through the sound test. Let me know what you guys think. Sensor, not too much to talk about here. So they both use, I guess the Razer Viper uses the Razer's Focus Plus sensor, which is basically a modified 3389, I think. It goes up to 16,000 dpi, really responsive, no problems with it. Razer Viper Mini uses a scaled down version of the same sensor, so it only goes up to 8,500 dpi, which shouldn't be a problem for most people. I don't think I really hear too many cases of people using anything past like 3,200 dpi, for example. So I don't think that's an area of concern. The one area of concern that came out initially with the Razer Viper Mini was the higher liftoff distance. Hasn't really bothered me, and I think people seem to overhype the problem, but again, it's a degree of personal preference comes into play here. So if higher liftoff distance is enough to dissuade you from purchasing a mouse, then yeah, stray away from the Razer Viper Mini, because it's definitely higher than most like top tier gaming mice. But if you're a normal person, or maybe your aim is not thrown off too much from lifting the mouse up and stuff like that, like mine isn't, then I would still say that the sensor is a very good one, very responsive. Actually, I would say arguably more responsive than like a PMW 3360, so I would keep that in mind. When it comes to the weight of both these mice, I would say, just out of popularity, I'm going to reference them. The Razer Viper comes in very close to a Glorious Model O, and the Viper Mini comes very close to an O-. So plus or minus 2 or 3 grams. I think the exact measurement for the Viper Mini was like 61 grams or something, and then for the Viper it was like 70. So both really light mice. I think that the weight difference is like very subtly noticeable. It's there if you're really paying attention to it, but again, I think what a lot of people sort of undershoot here is that when you buy a mouse and you're using it for a little bit, you're going to get used to it. So take all the CS pros or like any competitive gamer. I think a lot of them are stuck using like really old mice, like Zowie EC mice, Zowie S mice. And the reason is because maybe they really like the shape at the beginning, and the idea of getting used to something else is kind of an interesting concept. And none of them have really paid it much attention because they're already playing at the top of their game. So yeah, I mean, like lower weight is definitely nice, and especially if you're used to it, it seems really nice. But I think there's maybe an overhyping that's happening, and my reason for that is mainly because habit is a very strong thing. So whenever you're using a mouse of any weight, you have plenty of time to get used to it. You have plenty of time to adjust to whatever you're using. So I think that's about all I wanted to say. Largely very similar mice in almost all respects. Buttons feel has like very, very subtle differences, and I would say that's probably the biggest difference between these mice other than the size. That's why I said at the beginning of this video that it largely comes down to how big your hands are and what your grip style is. So I'll reiterate, smaller hands, small medium hands if you guys want like a fingertip mouse or a palm grip or a regular claw. Then yeah, the Viper Mini is going to be your best bet. If you're looking for something like medium, large size hands, and you palm grip, or if you sort of fingertip grip, then or claw grip. Honestly, any grip, if you have larger hands, should be pretty suitable for the Razer Viper. I have heard of some niche cases where people wanted the Viper Mini even with larger hands. So I would really say that if you're a large-handed person and you've aggressively fingertips, so I'm talking like really far away, your palm is really far away from the back of the mouse, then you might also want to consider the Razer Viper Mini. I think that choice comes down to you and what you're really looking for. As I mentioned, if you want something more low profile, Razer Viper will give you that feeling more so than the Viper Mini. But the Viper Mini is an overall smaller mouse. So I hope this video helped you guys out. I guess in general, I would also want to recommend some other options for people if you're not looking for something that I mentioned in this video. So I know, for example, my audience is Minecraft PvP. And if you're playing Minecraft PvP and that's your main game, I hate to break this to you guys, but I don't think either of these mice is your best bet, simply because of the new buttons that Razer is using on their mice. They're just not the best for Minecraft PvP. They might be really good for other kinds of games like first-person shooters, Fortnite, all that stuff. So if you guys want a full buyer's guide, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll definitely start working on that because I definitely think that a lot of you guys can benefit from maybe some of the recommendations I can give. So let me know. Leave a like if you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see other things like this. This is kind of like a random video relative to my other ones, but I figured that it would help you guys out. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.